Delivering a positive customer experience is central to your company's success today. And in light of this imperative, the way you plan, execute, and analyze your direct marketing campaigns is likely to have an impact on the quality of the customer experience you deliver. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to take you through the marketing campaign process and share some tips and best practices with you. Whether you are new to campaign management or a seasoned professional, I hope you find it useful. As way of introduction, my name is Martin Clark and I head up Aptico in the German-speaking region, although as you probably recognize, I am in fact British. Over the last years, I've seen campaign management really evolve from a fringe marketing activity to a core strategic process to help deliver customer-centric communications, which are, of course, a key part of delivering that high-quality customer experience. Marketers are often daunted by the challenge of understanding their customer data and turning it into actionable insights to deliver successful campaigns. They often feel they're drowning in data. There's so much data they could work with. And this is really coupled with a sometimes bewildering array of technical solutions and options, meaning that it can be confusing to know where to start. There is, of course, a fine balance to be made between relying on technology and of course, your own creative marketing skills. One thing that marketing automation should definitely help with is freeing up your time from more manual tasks, possibly time-consuming tasks, to focus really your time on where it makes the most difference, whether that be in analysis or creative or maybe the overall marketing strategy. So let's get started and take a look at the building blocks of a successful campaign. Firstly, whilst this may sound obvious, take some time to be clear about your strategy and overall objectives. What are you trying to achieve? Is it revenue growth, or do you want to deepen your loyalty, extend the relationships with existing customers, or are you moving into new segments or new markets and want to increase your brand presence and awareness? With each of these possible strategies, and of course there are many more, there are numerous multiple tactics or campaigns that can contribute to achieving that goal. So for example, for revenue growth, you could include new client acquisition or cross-sell, upsell campaigns, or maybe you want to try out new channels. So typically, this will be summarized in a campaign brief, which you can share with your internal colleagues, gain their agreement to, and share externally with your marketing agency, for example. The next most important thing to do at this stage is to really define your measure of success. So it is not necessarily only about increasing revenue. If you're trying to foster engagement, for example, perhaps the goal is to entice a response or to attend an event. If so, you need to make sure you can measure that metric. The first step in the process, the campaign process, is to determine who you're targeting. Targeting is really essential, and I'm personally surprised at the amount of time and effort that goes into designing potentially complex campaign automations, and the determination of who you're targeting can sometimes be almost an afterthought. So there's a big difference between finding a target group to fit your campaign and designing a campaign with a target group in mind, which is what we at Aptico call insight into action. So try to really delve deep into your customer transaction data to identify targeted segments. So for example, you may determine that people with a certain average lifetime value living within a certain proximity of your store locations across the country, they're the people that look very attractive for a particular proposition, and you may want to design a campaign with that target group in mind. Of course, having access to the right information is essential and critical to your campaign success. So the more you can break down your data silos and bring all your customer data together in one place, the better. Common sources of data include your CRM data, so customer relationship management data, web data, that could be web tracking data or web shop data if you're in e-commerce, ERP, enterprise resource planning data, so for example, order information, mobile data if you have a company app, for example, and maybe some of this or all of this information is already consolidated in a data warehouse provided to you by your IT department. Retail POS, point of sales information could also be relevant, as well as third-party data, so third-party commercial data or market research data. Also, try to think about bringing together your unknown and known customer data. So, for example, the unknown anonymous website visitors you have and your customer data. And if so, if you want to bring this together, you may need to look into an identity resolution solution. You'll also want to consider really what you're allowed to bring together from a consent and data protection standpoint, and what you can technically bring together. So are there common identifiers across these disparate data sets that allow you to bring that information together? Permissions handling across your multiple channels will also be something that you'll need to manage here. So within targeting, the topic of targeting, there are multiple aspects to consider. The first one are your contact rules. So these could be, for example, frequency capping rules. So these are rules that you determine in order to make sure you don't over communicate with your customers. So for example, this could be something like, I only want to contact people a maximum of 3 times across all channels within a month. Contact history here is essential, ideally across all your channels, and there are many tools out there that have grown out of individual channels such as email or mobile, and you really need to make sure that they can handle or capture and keep track of and make available contact history across all your active channels. You also want to think about campaign prioritization at this point. So this is, for example, assigning priorities to your campaign. So, for example, your birthday campaign may have precedence over your daily newsletter, and this will determine also which people are communicated with by your campaign. And an extension of this is what is called campaign optimization. So this is at the individual or person level, using scores that will come from your analysis tool to determine which customer journeys they're most likely to react to or respond to. So if there's 10 or 15 possible customer journeys, the software in this case will need to help you to automatically assign people to the customer journeys that are most relevant to them, or whether they're going to generate a high return. So that's quite an exciting area of campaign management now, where you're really taking the power of predictive analytics and applying it to the targeting phase of your campaigning process. Predictive analytics, I've already mentioned the word. This can help you determine things like your next best customer that you're going to target, or you may look at something like next best offer, or type of predictive analytics here, which will help you determine what customers are likely to purchase next, and you may want to segment or group your customers accordingly. Event triggers are becoming increasingly important, and some interesting research was shared by Scott Brinker from Chief Martech earlier in 2020, which showed for email campaigns that event-triggered campaigns would deliver more effective, 500% more effective in terms of click-through rates than traditional batch and blast email campaigns. These, of course, will generate much smaller groups or target groups, but in aggregate, if you have enough of them, they could also deliver a sizable volume, and are certainly an exciting way of addressing very specific audiences based on specific event triggers. Event triggers fall into 3 main categories. So we talk about internal event triggers, external, and time-based ones. So internal event triggers could be, for example, you pass a particularly loyalty threshold, points threshold, or your customers exceed this threshold, and therefore they unlock additional benefits which you may want to communicate to them. An external event trigger could be something like the weather. Its forecast indicates it's likely to snow in a week's time. Therefore, if you're in the MOT or tire business, you may want to send out a communication to invite people to change their tires to winter tires. Or it could be a so-called geofence location. So you pass a geofence outside a store and you get a push notification on your mobile, your smartphone. Time-based event triggers could be, well, the classic one is, of course, the birthday campaign or your anniversary campaign, or it could be what we call next best time. So using the purchase transaction data to look at patterns to predict when someone is most likely to come into question for a repurchase of a particular product. So why do these work, these event triggered campaigns? Well, they're very specific and precise, and they take into account the context of the customer. Is the customer on holiday or traveling or possibly in a good mood because it's their birthday? That's why they work. So once you've determined your target audience, the next step in the process is to determine your message. And of course, personalization plays a key role here. So you're going to want to take into consideration things like your business rules. Do you want to introduce an A/B test? Do you want a content split? Is it the red, the blue, or the green sweater that is is relevant for your target group? And you'll probably want to determine the number of content blocks in your message. Do you just want to have 2 or 5 content blocks that you want to personalize? Take into consideration the incentive itself, so using coupons, discounts, prizes, and the creative, so the picture or image that is associated with each message. You'll typically create multiple content variants to test. Just remember that whilst it's relatively easy to create dozens or hundreds or even thousands of variants, so that's combinations of content, you will potentially need creative materials, for example, images to support them. So don't go over the top to start with. You can always increase the number of variants over time. And of course, you want to make sure you capture performance metrics. So you'll want to probably introduce a comparison group within your variants against which to test other content. So for example, was it the red, the green sweater that performed better than your blue sweater? So now that we've determined the target group, the message, you're going to want to make sure you've got the right channel in place to communicate with them. So here you'll want to look at channel preferences for individual customers. Have they communicated that to you? You'll want to take into consideration the cost of channels. So, for example, an email is much cheaper to deliver than a direct mailing piece, but a direct mailing piece may have a higher conversion rate. And you'll want to take into account permissions as well. Do you, in fact, have an opt-in to communicate with someone at all via email or another channel? And make sure you use a control group here. So that is a group that does not receive your message. So you can compare how effective your message was in the analysis phase. There have been studies to show that a customer who engages with you across multiple channels is often a more valuable one than a single channel. So also try to think about how to mix and match channels to try different things out. For example, for an online basket cancellation, you could try sending a coupon by post rather than a possibly forgettable email. Also, consider the overall customer journey and where the customer is in that journey. Maybe they will start more with online channels, but depending on the type and value of the product, they may wish to visit a store or speak with a sales representative later, or maybe it's the other way around. They go to the store to inform themselves and then they purchase online. So how do you capture and measure responses? So that's the next step in the process. Is it directly attributable to a campaign via a key code? So a one-to-one link between receiving the message and responding, or is it an inferred response? So someone who received the mailing and purchases within, let's say, 4 weeks after the mailing went out, you could determine that that is close enough for you to attribute the response to the campaign. And of course, there are different types of responses you want to consider. So purchasing or engagement. For an engagement campaign, it could be the clicks or opens of your email, or whether someone attended an event. This goes back to the measure of success you determined up front. And think beyond sales. So especially within the context of an end-to-end customer journey, the response may in fact just be the trigger for the next step in the journey rather than an end in itself. And you'll want to think about how you can improve next time. So the end of the campaign is the beginning of the next campaign, and it could be part of an overall customer journey. At the end of your campaign, you should have some sort of campaign debrief to answer these types of questions, and I'm sure there's many more. Don't take too narrow a view of the campaign as well, just something like response rate. Consider the absolute revenue you generated, as well as what we recommend is the changes in your customer segment. So look at the makeup of your customer segments before the campaign and after the campaign, and see what sort of changes have taken place. If your short-term campaign success has actually come at the expense of customers sliding down from your VIP value segment to a lower one, it will come back to haunt you later. So therefore, you really need to take a holistic view and come up with multiple KPIs to make sure that you're getting a full picture of the success of the campaign in a more strategic way. So what's next? Of course, it's time to start again, but this time you're going to have more insights, more experience, and of course, more confident to make your campaign a success. The increase in channels, the explosion of channels, and the need to offer a coherent customer journey and experience means it's really hard to manage this process manually with handoff points within the process. And really, you're going to want to bring together the power of the technology itself and, of course, your creative marketing skills. So technology is essential. You want technology to help you to collect the right information, turn the raw data into real actionable insights, and then to create successful campaigns with a high degree of conversion. We at Aptica have chosen to specialize in developing such software over many years. And it's possible to make this marriage work. So we create with the Aptica Marketing Suite the ability for you to bring together your disparate data sets, so to have a unified view of your customer data, adding intelligence, creating actionable insights, and going so far as automating campaigns and deploying sophisticated techniques such as using affinity scores to determine the best journey for each individual customer. And this, of course, means you're going to keep increasing your campaign effectiveness, keeping customers engaged, and ultimately achieving the holy grail, if you like, of marketing, which is to turn those customers into loyal fans and advocates for your brand. So I hope you found this useful. If you'd like to learn more about what we at Aptica offer and how we can help you with our software, please feel free to book a demo and speak to an expert from Aptica, either via the website, so on aptica.com, or via this link here. And you can ask any questions you'd like regarding today's content to your Aptica representative. And it just leaves me to say good luck, and I wish you success in your campaign management, and I hope you found today's session useful and insightful. Thank you.